Hi, I'm Tammy Potter, and welcome to the Pregnancy Process Podcast, a show designed to help you navigate the hugely transformative journey to motherhood, where you'll hear the unique experience of experts in this area and the incredible stories of women sharing their conception, pregnancy, and postnatal journeys so that you can have a healthier, more informed pregnancy. In today's episode, I'm talking to co-founder of not-for-profit Creative Women's Business and portrait photographer Katie Kaars. Katie has over 20 years experience as a photographer, and as much as she doesn't love this title, she is an influencer in this space. But she's also the mum of two beautiful children. And in this episode, we talk about the journey Katie traversed to becoming a mum of two and the difficulties of finding your purpose and redefining yourself after having children when you run your own business in a creative industry. Katie, thank you so much for your time today. It's great to have you with us.
My pleasure.
I think first, if it's okay with you, let's talk about your journey as a photographer, becoming a photographer, because I know, it is such a specific industry to get into, and it is very competitive, especially these days. And I feel that this is kind of the thread that ties everything that I want to talk about in together. So you've been a photographer for over 20 years now. Like, how did you get into that?
I first picked up my first camera when I was about, 10 or 11. My grandfather, he'd been gifted a camera from his neighbour, and he was quite into taking photos, and he had these beautiful little black and white prints, which I was quite enamoured by. And he was quite handy with his hands and into like creating things. He was an engineer and he would make things, and I just felt it felt to me like photography was something mysterious that I wanted to get into. My mum and dad are quite creative as well. And my mum I think she saw that creativity in me before I knew it was there. And she sort of just pushed me towards taking photos. And it just sort of flowed on from there. In high school, there was a dark room. My first roll of film, it had nothing on it. But I had the bug. I was excited by not knowing what was going to be on in that film, because, back then you would process it yourself in a dark room. You'd go out and take photos. I remember my mum saying to me, "I don't know what you did." And I'm like, "I don't know either, but I want to try again." And I could have just gone, "Oh, well, this isn't for me," but I felt really excited by it. There's something about, I guess I have a bit of a science brain. I'm sciencey, I like that whole doing things with my hands and creating something out of nothing. Do you know what I mean? So it just excited me. So that's sort of how I started. And then I just kept on doing photography all through high school. And then after high school, I traveled for a year, and then I went and studied photo media at Sydney College of the Arts. Just out of Sydney Uni. And then once I finished my arts degree, I got an honours degree. So I did 4 years of study. I realised that I wasn't going to be an artist, because I studied photo media, which is very broad, so photos could be the start of your media that you would create to go on a wall, or you could start with photography and then you'd end up creating it into a photo and a painting, or a photo and a sculpture, or light, or you would create something that was around photography. But you have to be a certain kind of person to be an artist, and I was not that kind of person. I'm very practical. I'm not a big dreamer. I'm very practical, as you know.
More doer.
Yeah, exactly. So from that, I realized that I needed to probably be a commercial photographer, and I just found this commercial photographer, or a photographer in the Good Weekend magazine. He would shoot the covers of all sorts of different people, celebrities through to, whatever the latest story was. And I was quite enamored by what he did. So back then it was the Yellow Pages, and I found his phone number and I called him literally every day until he let me come into his studio.
Are you serious? I didn't know that. That's amazing. So
Yeah.
you were on the phone every single day
Yeah.
calling him until he was like, okay, you can come into the studio. That
Yeah.
is such a great story. I love that.
So I went into the studio and I met him for an hour and we chatted, and he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I want to learn the business of photography, and
Mhm.
I really like people, and I see that you do a lot of portraits, so that I feel like that's my calling. And then he let me start working with him every day for free, and I did that for a few months. Like, I was lucky I was living back at home by then. That I could afford to do that. And so, yeah, the rest is sort of history. From there, I worked with him for a while. He started paying me. Then I started working with other photographers, and I just learned the photography business. And I learned really that photography is the same. It doesn't matter where you work in the world, because I've worked in New York and London. It's the same. It's the same business. Everyone just has a slightly different eye, and they have a slightly different take on how they're going to take that picture. And I learned that we're a service industry, basically. And I have that service industry background. I, worked in general pants. I like to help people. Like, that is just, that's what drives me. So, yeah, it went from there, and I haven't looked back, I guess.
Amazing. So just a couple of things just from what you were saying then. What is it that drew you to being a portrait photographer? Because you said you felt that was your calling.
People. I'm really interested in people. I mean, my husband calls me nosy, but I don't really think it's nosiness. I'm fascinated by people. Like, I want to know people's stories. I did a lot of work about this during my honours degree at university, and I don't know if it's because I lost family during the Holocaust, but like, I have this incessant need to know about how people run their lives, how people are. I'm very invested in people. So that's what drives me, and that's what lights me up, is being around other people. So I felt like, because I worked in the fashion industry as well, I worked with a very famous fashion photographer for quite a long time as his assistant. And it just bored me. I didn't want to be sitting around waiting for hair and makeup for like 3 hours, and then styling, and then being really particular about the clothes and the way the clothes sit and the way the hair is. I was just like, this isn't for me. I just want to connect with that person and try and create their image the way I see it. So that's how I sort of have always sort of seen it. And all of my photos have always been of people. I tried to do some still lives once at university, and they were terrible. So like, that's what lights me up.
Okay, cool. And just in terms of, like, it sounds like your career has taken you to some quite interesting places. Where have you been with your photography career? So you lived in London and New York, and you were working there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I assisted Richard Bailey for quite a long time, who was a big fashion photographer. He was lovely. And he was sort of my mentor, really. But I knew I wasn't ever going to he was never going to pass the baton to me, because I wasn't going to be the fashion photographer. But he talked so much. He used to live in New York. He used to do the Victoria's Secret catalogs a long time ago. And he used to talk about New York this, New York that. And I was like, I've got to go there. So I went to LA, and I worked with him in LA for a little bit, and worked with a couple of other photographers there. And then I went to Canada, Toronto and Vancouver, Montreal. And then I went to New York, and I just stayed there for 3 months. And basically I couldn't get paid because there was no visa, really. I had to be sponsored by a photographer. So I assisted some big photographers there, like Stephen Klein, who shoots like the Calvin Klein campaigns. And then I had a photographer offer me a position in his studio, but I didn't want to be an assistant anymore. I'd had enough of it by then. I was ready to like do my own thing. And luckily, my grandfather was British. So I could go and live in the UK. I could get a visa to work and live in the UK. So I moved to London after that. And sort of when I got to London in September 2003, that's really when my photography career started. So yeah, 20 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So how did the decision to have children alter your career path?
Oh God. Well, I wanted to have children a lot earlier than my husband, but he's a bit younger and he'd set up his own business. And we'd moved back from the UK and gotten married. And I sort of thought, okay, let's go, let's have kids. Because I didn't have any clients here. I was an assistant when I left. So I didn't know anyone and I didn't know how to meet anyone. I got an agent and they sort of tried to shop me around, but I just kept on not getting any clients from them. So I really wanted to have kids, but it took us a little while to get round to that point, probably about 3 years or so. And then finally, we decided to make a go of it, and we did. And I have to say, after my first child, I was like, I'm jack of it. I just don't know how to start photography again. I don't know how to find clients. I don't know how I'm going to get my head around this. Like, what am I going to do in my life? There was a lot of like self-reflection and trying to understand what it is that motivated me and why I wanted to be a photographer. And I think because your focus is pulled so much to your child, I mean, it must be just an instinct thing as well. You sort of forget about that other stuff. I don't know. So yeah,
I mean, your brain totally changes, like your brain chemistry changes in order for you to focus on the child. So yes, it's absolutely, that's 100% what happens. Like your brain completely changes. The neurons change. Yeah, you have like the gray matter in your brain changes during pregnancy, and then it changes again once you actually have the baby. So absolutely, what you're experiencing is nature doing its thing to make sure that baby actually has an opportunity to thrive. So nature doesn't want mothers to be focusing on anything else except the child. So what you were feeling is nature doing its work to make sure that your baby had its best opportunity in life to thrive. Because don't forget, we are ancient beings, right? We're not modern beings. We're ancient beings. So we come from a time where if the mothers weren't completely focused on their babies, then a tiger could come along and snatch it, if you know what I mean. So we're kind of on the plains back in the day, we're ancient beings. So that's why. But before, because there's so many things that when you're talking, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to ask about that. And but I think before we go down your path, so you came back to Sydney and you were living in Sydney for a couple of years before you fell pregnant. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
And it was in that time that you were trying to fall pregnant with your first child, but also trying to kind of reignite your career here in Sydney as well.
That's right.
Right. Okay. But are you okay talking about your kind of your pregnancy and childbirth journey? How do you feel about and your birth story?
Which one?
Let's talk about, because I think it is a bit of a journey. And for those that don't know, I've known Katie for a number of years, and I trained her postnatally from her first pregnancy and then trained her all the way through her until she fell pregnant with her second child, trained her through that pregnancy and did the postnatal repair with that. So we've worked together for a long time. But are you okay talking about the birth of your first child and I guess the subsequent kind of journey after that?
Yeah. So Vincent was a really long labor. He's now 9. So, it was a while ago, but I remember it vividly. Starting on a Thursday, I went into labor, but nothing happened. He didn't come out until Sunday morning at 3 a.m. So it was pretty long. Yeah.
So Thursday morning till Sunday, 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like three days.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable talking any more about your birth experience or?
Yeah. So I was having lunch with some friends and I was like, oh my God, I'm in labor. Like, I've got to go to the bathroom. Like, I needed to wee. I needed to make some room because I was like, I'm having contractions. Like, and so it was just really light to start off with. And then it continued through that evening, Thursday evening. I was up quite a bit. And then Friday, I was, it was just sort of off and on, off and on. Friday night was pretty hectic. I didn't sleep at all and I felt like he was coming for sure. And Saturday we went into hospital and they checked me and they're like, oh, honey, you're nowhere near dilated. Go home, have a rest. You haven't slept for 2 nights, so you're beside yourself, tired. They gave me some Panadine Fort and some diazepam to help me sleep and rest, which I didn't take, but my husband did instead. He didn't take the Panadine Fort, but he took the I took some Panadol though. I did take some Panadol and I tried to sleep. I didn't feel right about taking diazepam and being all spaced out, but I probably, on reflection, I should have taken it. So I slept on the couch that night and I labored that night, definitely, because I was up and about. So that Saturday night and then Sunday, I felt a bit better and a bit different. And I started walking around the block and like, it was still all over the place, but it was happening, And so I went in Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. And they were like, oh, you're like 3 centimeters. It's like nothing. And my waters didn't break. And I had done calm birth, and calm birth were like, don't let them break your waters, have a birth plan, have an idea, and write it all down and give it to your midwife. And like, I cannot disagree with that more. Like, it was so bad that in my mind, and I'm like quite rigid, when I've got an idea, I stick to that idea. Like, I'm not flexible, so this was my plan and I'm sticking to this. And so the midwives, obviously they honor your plan. So I labored, pushing, trying to get him out, but he's just not moving. And eventually I'm 10 centimeters dilated and it's midnight. And they said, he's not moving and we want to get him out. So we're going to have to give you an epidural and an episiotomy. And I remember as soon as I had that the epidural, I was so happy. Jono said I was cracking on to the anaesthetist. So he had a hole in his scrubs and I was like, I can see your undies. And Jono's like, easy. But yeah, once I had the episiotomy and I was like, had my legs in stirrups, it feels so archaic. And then the registrar comes in with these huge salad servers because they had to get forceps in order to get him out. I could not believe the size of them. I'm like, you're sticking that in me? And she's like, yep. And I was like, oh my God. So, and then he was out within not long, but yeah, it was pretty traumatic. And so there was a lot of sewing that had to happen and it was long and I was so tired and I was swollen from all the pushing and I was swollen down there. I was swollen in my face. I was just uncomfortable. So if there's anything that, I could take away from that, it's like, don't have a plan, be open-minded. You don't know what's going to happen. Every birth is going to be different. Be flexible. Listen to the midwives. They've done it 1,000 times, I had a beautiful midwife and she just stuck with what I wanted. And that was lovely of her, but I really wish that she pushed me a bit harder to break my waters. And then it probably would have progressed a little bit better. And afterwards, the midwife said to me, oh, I think you did too much yoga when you were pregnant. And I'm like, what makes you say that? And I did do a lot of yoga. I was really into yoga. She's like, I think you've just overstrengthened your pelvic floor. And so you couldn't release enough. I don't know. Is that true?
100%. Yeah. So absolutely. And I think what we're starting to see nowadays is predominantly more women are having what's called a hypertonic pelvic floor. So and especially I think because, the way that women do train is slightly different from probably our mothers before that. But what they are starting to see is predominantly more women having hypertonic pelvic floors. So they're going into labor with pelvic floors that are too tight, or what they've done is because they've been so terrified of having some kind of pelvic floor dysfunction after pregnancy, is that they've overdone on the pelvic floor exercises, so they've strengthened, but they're not actually doing the release, because the pelvic floor is a muscle, so you can contract it, but it also needs to be relaxed at the same time. But what's happening is, like, women are just doing the contractions and they're doing too much of it. And if their pelvic floor is already tight and they don't actually know that it's tight and they're doing more contractions, they're actually creating more of a problem. So then when it comes to the time of birth, the pelvic floor needs to stretch 3 times its natural length. But if it's too tight already and there's no ability to relax it, then of course, it just doesn't have that capacity to stretch through. So then that's what's happening. A lot of women are having hypertonic pelvic floors, and they are ending up with things, like they're either going down the path of emergency C-sections, or their births are sounding a lot more like yours, which is why I definitely am very pro sending women to the specialist women's health physio while they're pregnant, before they go through their birth, just to see what's actually happening with their pelvic floor. And personally, I don't cue pelvic floor until someone's actually been to the specialist women's health physio, because you just don't know what's going on with it. So, and absolutely yoga can do that. Strength training can do that. So yeah, it's quite true. So, how did the birth, because, if for someone to view birth as traumatic, it definitely has an impact on their health and well-being as they come out of that 4th trimester and into their journey as being a new mom. How did your birth kind of affect your journey as an early mother?
I was so excited to be a mum. I really was. And I was so happy to have this perfect little boy in my life. He's just
pretty cute, by the way.
So gorgeous. And I felt so proud and excited, but oh my God, it was so hard. I think also I didn't have any of the knowledge about the pelvic floor. I wish I'd seen a pelvic floor specialist before, or a women's physio before I'd given birth. So I didn't know any of that kind of stuff. And also I'm a pretty wound up type person. So I like everything to be in a certain sort of, and then my life was turned upside down, and by this little person who I had so much love, and I wanted to do the best by him. And I was so excited to have him in my life, because, as soon as I met my now husband, I couldn't wait to have kids with him, So, but it was hard, because I really struggled with breastfeeding, because I've got an underactive thyroid. So your breast milk takes a long time to come in. And he had a tongue tie, so he would have latching problems. And I went to so many clinics and so many, breastfeeding clinics, and trying to make it all happen. I was out of hospital within 24 hours as well, I've got to say. So my postnatal care was some grumpy midwife coming over and going, well, he's lost too much weight. What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never done this before. Help me. And she's trying to show me how to breastfeed properly, and then I have to go to a lactation specialist. This is all done through the public health system, which is amazing, and I understand that they're completely overstretched, but sometimes there's not a lot of empathy there for a new mother. And I really felt that. And I really felt the pressure that I had to breastfeed. My mum was really pressuring me, got to breastfeed. It's really important for attachment, that kind of thing. But it was really hard for me. I mean, I had sore red nipples until he was over 3 months old. So it was painful. It was really painful. But once we got into the rhythm of it, it was well and truly worth it. I had to top him up with formula, and I felt guilty about that, and I shouldn't have felt guilty. There's so much guilt about that kind of stuff, which I think is completely unfair and unfounded for women. But once we sort of hit the 3-month mark, things changed, and I felt great and good. Well, it's I think by the time they're 3 months, you've got your sort of groove on.
Yeah. And so with that, because like I've said, I trained Katie postnatally after the birth of Vincent, and throughout her subsequent pregnancy, and then postnatally as well. So I know that you did have abdominal separation. And if anybody saw, Katie's quite a petite person. So, and Vincent was quite a big baby. So definitely, and 100% of women have abdominal separation by their late stage of pregnancy, but you did have abdominal separation, which needed to be repaired. And I know that there was some pelvic floor dysfunction postnatally. How did that affect and you're a very fit, healthy person. Like, how did you find that journey back to training and being back in your body and feeling that kind of ownership and control over your body postnatally?
Well, it was hard. I think both my husband and I were pretty fit people and enjoy exercise for both our mental health and our well-being. So I said to my husband, I need to get back to the gym, and I've found Fitness First has a creche where I can leave Vincent for however long. And so I quickly hot-footed it there, and they said to me, you should meet Tammy Potter.
Yeah.
And I'd have to say I was pretty broken, because I had also the wrist issue.
De Quervain's.
Yeah. So I was pretty broken when I came to see Tammy, I've got to say, all over. And like, I used to run, yoga, swim, like I would do anything, Pilates. Like I just like to exercise. I feel good exercising. So yeah, I was pretty broken and pretty down about it, I've got to say. I had to wear a wrist brace for quite a long time, and that was upsetting to me because things weren't the way they used to be. Like, but you're never going to be the same after you've had a child. So sort of had to let go of that. But I think seeing someone like you to help me through that journey was a massive impact on my life in general, and my mental health, because it got me back to training and feeling like I had ownership over my body. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but
no, that's totally fine. And you can run and jump and skip and do all of the things now.
I can, but there was a period of time when I couldn't. I mean, I now wear a pessary at all times, and I probably will, but I have prolapse, but that's from after having my second pregnancy. So it's not as bad. It's definitely gotten much better, but it's there, and it'll be with me forever. So,
but in terms of living your life, and it's something that I think so many women just don't talk about, if you know what I mean. Like, I remember, my mum would probably kill me if I say this, but like, I remember my mum growing up, she'd cross her legs sneezing, like, it's something that's just the generation of women before us and their mothers, they just didn't talk about this stuff. They don't talk about the potential effects of pregnancy and birth on the woman's physical body. And I think only now we're starting to almost open that conversation a little bit more, because people are going through experiences that are personal experiences, and a lot of people maybe potentially don't want to be talking about them. And then when women are pregnant, you don't want to be freaking them out, but these are conversations that need to have some kind of air around them, that these things do happen. These are the potential effects of, maybe not going to the specialist women's health physio before giving birth. And I think the more women that are exposed to these potential things that could happen, the better the next generation is going to be. And I think it's something that just wasn't spoken about before.
Well, I mean, from my mum's perspective, she's like, I didn't know. I mean, I do vaguely remember at school or at some stage, she did talk about pelvic floor exercises, but they didn't break it down like a women's physio would, and there are sort of levels of strengthening your pelvic floor. So it's not something that I really knew about. And I remember my mum doing the same. Like we'd come home and she'd push through everyone to get to the bathroom first.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing from my perspective is to educate women that it doesn't have to be like that always. I mean, I remember one of my clients who had severe pelvic floor dysfunction to a point where after birth, she couldn't walk more than 10 minutes at a time. So she got so much better to a point that she actually did the Spit to Manly walk. Now that's quite a long walk. And at one point she actually got sick. And she got a really bad cough, and it was a consistent cough for a long period of time. And when she went back to her GP, she went to her basic GP and explained to her GP about her pelvic floor dysfunction and the fact that the cough was making it worse. And this GP actually turned around and said to this woman who had been at that point through such a long journey, this GP said to this woman that that's just the way that it's going to be from now on. And this is the message that women are getting, is that that's just the way that it is. But I think that we need to change that message. And I think the message needs to be, it doesn't have to be this way, and it doesn't always have to be that way. And there are things that you can do, and there are, before falling pregnant, there are things that you can do during pregnancy. There are things that you can do after pregnancy to make sure that the impact on your body is not as great as it could potentially be. And I think that's how I see my role in all of that as well. But we're not really here to talk about me. So just in terms of your pregnancy and your postnatal journey, what would be the thing that you feel was your greatest lesson during that time?
My first pregnancy?
Just throughout the whole journey.
Well, I think like nothing is how you expect it to be. Like you can dream that it's going to be a certain way, but it's just not. And sometimes you just got to go through the journey. And I think that's just a life lesson anyway. You might have big dreams of how it's going to work out, but it's not always going to be that way.
Isn't that the truth?
Like, be flexible. You've just got to be flexible. And I think that's something that, I'm always working on. So, and that was a big lesson during pregnancy and birth and trying to get pregnant the second time. And you've just got to just go with the flow.
Yeah. And so in terms of that, what would you see as the most difficult aspect of your pregnancy and postnatal journey?
Well, getting pregnant the second time was definitely probably the worst part. I had several miscarriages and like late ones, well, not late, but, I'd go to my 12-week scan and the baby had died, or, go to my 12-week scan and the baby had died. And missing a limb, that kind of thing. And that whole hope that, oh my God, I'm pregnant. Yay, I can't wait to have another child, because, you know, I was late to have my first child anyway. I was 36 when I had Vincent. And I sort of just wanted to get on with it so I could get on with my life. Like I had, you know, as a female, especially when you're running your own business, you have these ideas of what your life is going to be like, and you want to have children, and you sort of want to get it over and done with so you can get back on track in your life. And that's definitely how I felt. So it was hard. It was really hard getting pregnant the second time. That was really difficult, emotionally and physically. So that was a massive lesson. And then the second time round, I think I'd learnt from the first, in that you just got to go with the flow, and you got to have formula.
You got to have formula. Well, I mean, I have spoken with a lactation specialist, and I think, you know, like my mum's a Karatani nurse, and she's always just said, listen, all that matters is that the mum and the baby are happy and healthy.
Exactly. Yeah.
At the end of the day. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Like, I know that I was there through that time. And I think even now, like, we all grow and we all evolve, and just knowing you were going through that was heartbreaking. So I appreciate you sharing that with us today, because it is a difficult time in anyone's journey. So, and then, you know, when you talk about, you know, wanting to get back on track with your life, you know, I know that redefining yourself and finding your purpose again after having children has been a journey for you. So, you know, what did that journey look like for you, like finding your purpose again?
Well, I really feel like that's only happened in the last year or so. And I do think that's down to my youngest child going to school. I felt like I had the brain space to actually think about where I was going or what I was doing. I'm always trying to like grow personally and professionally. And I think at the beginning of last year, I decided, this was post setting up Creative Women's Business, and we were holding events, and I felt really uncomfortable talking to everyone. Standing up in front of a crowd, I felt really nervous, and felt like those years of being told, be seen and not heard, or my mum constantly saying to me, shh, be quiet, really played over in my head. So when I had to stand up in front of a large group of people and talk, I felt like I wasn't worthy. And anyway, so I went on this course to learn how to speak in front of a crowd. And from that, I started practicing doing it on TikTok and Instagram. And I realized a light bulb went off last year, where I could see some of my friends and family posting photos or videos of themselves in a poorly lit situation or not knowing how to stand. And it just sort of it snowballed. So, but, you know, I do think it's after Vincent and Vivian, I tried to find clients, and I was like, I'm just not getting anywhere. I just don't feel like these clients value me. I'm not right for them. And I know why that is, because I'm right for the masses. I'm not right for one niche client. I'm not a Vogue photographer. I never thought I would be a Vogue photographer. I like to shoot a personality. I want to shoot someone. I want to be around people that really want to be there, who want to create an amazing picture of themselves because they need it. But then I saw that loads of other people on the amazing social media that we all live on these days need it too. So that's sort of how it's sort of come about. And it's a lot of, I started journaling and meditating. That all happened sort of COVID time. And since I've been doing that, I've been able to reflect and understand myself even better. I mean, I've got to say, life begins at 40. So yeah,
sure does.
yeah.
So how do you see the journey as being a mom? How do you see that influencing what you do now?
Turning as being a mum. Well, I feel really privileged. Like I'm privileged. So I want to give back. I'm I live in a beautiful country, in a beautiful city, in a beautiful house. And it's not that I feel guilty about that. I just feel like I could give people more. So to me, what fills me up is I go in to take a photo of someone and they're feeling completely nervous about having their photo taken. But I've got, little tips and tricks that I've picked up over the years of being an assistant and being a photographer. I know how to tell people how to stand. I mean, my husband calls me super bossy as well as nosy, but it works.
That's what we all love about you.
Nosy and bossy. Yeah, so I feel, and then that person feels so good when they've seen their photo or they've made those slight adjustments. So I just want to give that to people. Like, it shouldn't be a secret. And, there aren't a lot of people that are doing that. I've got a wealth of knowledge. My knowledge is photography. So why can't I share that?
Amazing. And just in terms of kind of redefining yourself, again, as a photographer, like, let's talk about that journey, because you've gone, like, in the process of this conversation, you've talked about coming back to Sydney. You were struggling to find work for a couple of years before you fell pregnant. Then you had 2 children, and there's just trying to get back into that again. I know that was a bit of a struggle as well. So how did you redefine yourself? I mean, you were talking about journaling and meditating. Was there any other tools or courses? Yeah, like you did a speaking course. Were there any other things that you did to kind of help you redefine yourself and help you find your purpose again?
I think a lot of it is self-reflection, and just finding what sparks joy in your life. So I just notice when I spend a lot of time going to offices and taking photos of people who don't normally have their photo taken, and just that joy when they see a picture of themselves, they're like, oh, I actually look really nice. It's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing, and I can tell you how to stand and sit and be and look this way and do that thing. And that's, I think, yeah, it's all just been trial and error. And like, I think we're always evolving, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, if you aren't, I think you're going to get left behind in life.
Well, there's only 3 ways there. You've got maintenance, creation, and destruction. So if you're not creating, you're sitting in maintenance, which is going to draw destruction sometime soon to create change. So that's my way of looking at it anyway. But so we've got one last question, and that is, what's the one thing you wish women knew before they had a baby?
To see women's physio.
Okay, fair. Yeah. So the one thing that you'd want or wish every woman knew before they had a baby was to see a specialist women's health physio.
Most definitely. Most important thing. Don't worry about anything else. Go and see them. Get your stretches done before you're about to go into labor. Make sure you are on top of all that stuff. And keep moving and keep exercising. And, I think that's really important. So I think a lot of women get put off by doing exercise because they're worried about what they might be doing. But I think as long as you've got the right people around you to tell you what you can and can't do, I think that's really important. So, yeah.
And be flexible.
Yeah, and be flexible. Don't go in there with a plan, because it never goes to plan. It's like life, I don't know. My mum paid for the calm birth because she really wanted me to have the experience. And look, it was an experience, but
it was an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just be open-minded and flexible, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
You can plan, but it's never like you have to have some flexibility in the plan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, exercise.
Most definitely. I mean, I love exercise. Like I do it daily now. 5:30 a.m. I'm in the garage, or I'm out running or walking the dog. So it's just you got to move your body. I mean, my daughter asked me a few weeks ago, Mum, why do you get up and exercise every morning? And it's like, because as humans, we're meant to move our bodies. We're not meant to sit around, so just remember that, like, we're still cavemen at heart.
100%. Yep, we absolutely are. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Katie. I really appreciate your candor and going to places where I know, it is difficult to talk about these things. And I know that there will be women out there that have shared similar experiences to you. And I'm hoping that hearing you talk openly about your experience might help them start talking a little bit more openly about their birth experience, because I definitely, in what I do, I see women who have had similar experiences to you in their births, and they aren't talking about it. They're not talking about it to me, even though they should be talking about it to me. They're not talking about it to me. And it takes time to even get them to start viewing their birth as potentially something that there is a little bit of trauma around for them personally, and maybe encouraging them to get into seeing someone to help them process that and talking about it, or even getting them in to see the specialist women's health physio. Some of them are scared to even do that. So, and that's the reality of what some people don't even know, that this is an option for them to do. They don't understand that there are people that can help them in these areas, and they don't want to talk about it. It's almost like they don't want to acknowledge that that's what's happened to them. So I definitely think conversations like this, where women can hear that other women's journeys, is really important, because it's something that hasn't been talked about before. And I think it's something that does need to be talked about a little bit more and be accessible to more people, rather than just maybe having a conversation with your girlfriend here and there. So thank you so much. I know you went to some very, very personal places in this conversation, which I appreciate.
Well, thanks for asking the questions. And I do hope that I have helped someone along the way.
And if you're hearing this message, I want to say a huge thank you, because it means that you've listened to this entire episode. Of course, if you have any questions about the things that we covered in this episode, or want to know more about me or my other projects, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at The Pregnancy Process. For those currently in their conception or pregnancy journey, you can actually apply to join my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. And you'll find my community application and social media links in the episode description. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I absolutely encourage you to share it with other women just like you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.